So allow me to introduce myself very quickly. I'm Mir Baradaran. I'm the founder of ABXR Engine. I started as an artist about a decade ago. Then I taught at Columbia University, nonlinear narrative formation. And I collaborated with what was, back in the days, one of the best AR companies in the world to produce complex public art projects. Unfortunately, a few years ago, that company was acquired by Apple, hence Apple's new AR kit. So subsequently, I no longer had access to that many engineers around me, and it really dawned on me that what if I could create a sophisticated no-code solution for the creative community as a way of democratizing access to content creation. And this is how ABXR has come to life. Now, we are in process of onboarding. Just a quick thing that, if you, artists, schools, creative agencies, art institutions. So if you're interested to reach out to me or my co-founder here, Randy, as well. But what I want to talk about today is not this. I want to talk about something a little bit more theoretical. I want to address the notion of data collection. Actually, maybe we can go to the next one. Next. I have a presenter. Where is it? Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. All right. So anyway, so that was ABXR. This is what we do, and. All right, so how can we claim our collective human agency in shaping the technology itself and affecting the stories that the machines are already telling about us? When talking about governance, usually it's the notion of individual privacy that comes to mind, which is a little bit ironic because machine learning has nothing to do with privacy, nor does it have anything to do with individuality. In other words, for the field of AI to exist, it requires massive amounts of data. And if it wasn't for the mass adoption of Web 2.0, and the, I would say, digitalization of every bit of our lives, basically, we would not have had any of the current AI capabilities that we have. So, let's, sorry, I want to make sure it works. Oh, sorry. All right. So let's look at the current AI ecosystem. There are two types of raw material that goes in. A lot of you probably are familiar with this. So the voluntary input, which is a smaller portion of everything, is what we put in as a active labor, as a conscious kind of way of sharing our information. This is when you download an app and you put in your information. But there's a major part that we do not see, and that's the exploitative input that's based on passive labor using involuntary or untold methods of extractions. So this is when, for example, your phone can match your eyeball movement or your facial expressions and decide whether or not you liked the line of text that you just read on your phone, right? So I'll try to go very fast. Now, what happens next? So the next point is that raw data is stored inside the proprietary storage, and there are two things that happen. So the first thing is that it's there to feed the storyteller, to maintain and improve the storyteller, the same thing as the black box or the algorithmic models that exist there, but I will choose to call it the storyteller. Now, the second purpose of collecting raw data is really to process the data. Using analysis and interpretation, this is basically the output of this are the stories that are being told about us. This is processed data. Most of the stories and predictions are made covertly. So this is what you see for targeted advertising, curating your news feed. You have no idea why or how, suggesting friends and dating partners and so on and so forth. But there are some parts where you actually have you know exactly what's the story they're telling about you, and that's when they tag, for example, your friends, you know that they know your friends, what they look like, and they're tagging them on your thing. So this map identifies significance of our role as producers of raw data as a core component of the technology itself. So that's really key point that I want to bring home. By embracing 2D screens, browsers, emails, chat, microphones, name it, voice commands, smartphones, and watches, we have played a crucial role in the development of predictive models and robustness of the AI capabilities as we know it. It's not an exaggeration to say that now our machines know us better than how we know ourselves. In fact, we have come a long way from the early days of automation where it was all about predictive models and prediction, because our role doesn't stop there. There's more to that. So we have seen astronomical budget in terms of spatial computing and the exponential kind of growth in terms of future projections of expenditures as well. So it's safe to say that mainstreaming of devices using spatial computing, such as AR glasses, eventually contact lenses, are simply a matter of when and not if. So in this context of AR wearables, we can say that we are basically turning ourselves into augmented informants where our body will serve as an extension to the very machines we have created to serve us. And I want to emphasize this for a couple of reasons. So, in fact, spatial AI will see what we see, will listen to what we hear, and will move through our bodies as we navigate through different spaces that we inhabit. So it is the convergence of all of these AI capabilities under the roof of spatial computing that I call spatial artificial intelligence that really creates a separation between the narrower, former version of AI that we have come to know. All right. Now, the capital-intensive nature of AI industry, decades of neoliberalism, pushing for market sovereignty, corporate interest, fewer overseeing agencies, and smaller governments have resulted in an unprecedented concentration of wealth and technological knowledge in the hands of very few, turning the tech industry into an oligarchical economy as we know it. So it's in this context that Dr. Shoshana Zuboff calls it the age of surveillance capitalism. And this is basically where we see a cycle of intensification of what started as prediction, automation as prediction, into what is now becoming shaping our behavior. The goal has become to shape our behavior. So in other words, the problem with the current AI ecosystem is that not only it uses extraction, exploitation, and deceit, all the verbs that are used to depict colonialism, by the way, but also the bigger problem is that now this same kind of apparatus and the big tech is now pursuing social engineering through tuning, herding, and behavioral conditioning. I won't get into the details of that, but it's self-explanatory. So another issue of the ecosystem is the concept of user, because it lacks agency and it ignores the labor that's put into it. I myself have used in the past citizen users. It gives a certain agency, collective agency, but also it talks about the rights as citizens, but it's just not enough. So I propose another terminology, and I call that digizen producers, to create the necessary conceptual space that can allow us to further critique the techno-economic forces that are behind what's happening right now. So how can we quantify and compare the value, and this is really some of the key questions here, the value of what's provided, that's the data from our everyday lives, versus what we receive as a service. What is a fair price to access these services? Do we have a fair transaction to begin with? And I would say probably not. And especially not because also the pillars of the AI industry itself, so the internet, cloud computation, hardware and software capabilities, they were mostly built with government funding especially in the US at least. And that's, in and of itself, it's basically paid by citizen and tax contributions of the citizens. So it's really interesting how we're left outside of that ecosystem. And there are ways in which obviously the big tech is making money, not only targeted advertising or sharing our data, but also selling the knowledge as knowledge itself, right? So for Facebook, and we have computer vision for face detection and functionalities. You have a lot of other forms of AI capabilities as well that we have. So as you see, our relationship with the big tech is becoming less and less equitable. So the question begs itself: how can we colonize the AI ecosystem? How can we claim ownership of the data we produce and the technological knowledge that stems from it? And how can we claim the cost of being alive and the labor we put into living our everyday lives? Now, here is what the good news is, that an alternative solution is possible. We have gestured towards that future, which we have called Collective Spatial Artificial Intelligence. There are a couple of requirements to that. I did this as part of a Rockefeller Foundation residency with a couple of my colleagues there. So the first one is requesting a copy of our raw data across all platforms. So you're familiar with this. This is the walled gardens. We have no access to our data. And the question would be, can we, do you see it? Yeah, can we basically have access to our data? Now, obviously, this brings to the second, sorry. Here you go. So this brings us to a second kind of requirement or challenge, which is the technological infrastructure. So yeah, let's have our data, but what does that really mean? What are the programming interfaces? What are the portals? What are the protocols? What are the standards that are necessary to create that kind of exchange and interaction? And so what we are saying is that think about us. So the next step of this is, let's say a group of people with their data will be able to create unionized data trusts and build their own kind of sort of AI capabilities. Now, here you go. Now, if you repeat this process and you go across demographics and industries, the goal would be to have a copy of all of our data across all platforms, and that there would be intermingling of these data and the processes we put together to create the AI that we desperately need. So, and here would be even further complicating it, so a network effect where you have data trust along with collective AIs with mini platforms interconnected and intra-connected as well. So, all right, so the third part is human infrastructure that's needed. So the human infrastructure is your trusted fiduciaries. So we can use common laws around notion of obligation to care, confidentiality, and loyalty. And we can also utilize existing platforms or independent regulators, such as the ones that are used for consumer protection that many countries have. So now you may say, what's the purpose of all of this? Let the poor big tech make money. Well, the problem is that most of the statistically significant patterns, the stories I was talking about, that emerge from our data fall on the floor of cutting rooms of the big tech. Because these patterns are harder to monetize, because they don't align with corporate interests. So we lose some of the upside of our stories, of all the data that exists out there right now. A lot of it is not being even used. And so, whereas if we were to use our proposed collective AI ecosystem, then we would have the notion of Creative Commons, for example. What's Creative Commons? It's that which allows for the utilization of certain things by public institutions, non-for-profits, B corporations, researchers, trusted bodies in the pursuit of goods and services for the collective good, if you want, and targeting societal problems through a non-for-profit or public model. There's always a funny conversation I've had that I always remember, which is, could Facebook have solved cancer by now? Did they even pursue to have that? Then is it part of their process to even answer those kind of questions? And the answer is no. But the level of data that they have aggregated, it should be used for some purpose. And there are some good purposes that these could be used for. So basically, the second purpose, other than goods and services, is really to mediate. And by mediate, I mean mediate, protect, and facilitate all interactions that take place between the digital producers and the tech industry. As you can see, I've put both the individual with a little orange thing and there's a little robot there as well every time there's an interaction that's taking place, because there will be both requirements for that kind of engagement. Now, there are some major challenges, policy, so how do we define rights? What are the fiduciary bodies? There are some design questions. So how do we even create the interface, altogether? Are we going to use spatial computing itself as AR avatars as interface to begin with? And also some technological questions, as we discussed, some technological issues. But the good news is that we have done it already. And I'm glad I'm in Europe right now because I grew up in Canada. So in Canada, we have done it. And that's our healthcare system, right? So what does the healthcare system do? The healthcare system says the healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And then based on that, there's a panoply of services and people and agencies that come into things. Starting by who gets the right to train the next generation of professionals, all the way to creating interfaces, physical interfaces, and different job opportunities and job descriptions. Your family doctor will see you at the beginning. If it's a specialty issue, you go to a specialty. If there's operation requirement, then you go into an operation room. So there are hospitals for that. So there are all kinds of forms and formats we have come to create, and people and agencies and regulatory bodies and policy in order to really get to the point of recognizing that healthcare is a right. So, and it goes really all the way up to like UI purposes as well. You have even collaboration between private and governmental and non-governmental agencies where pharmaceuticals come in. And then you have UI where you have you have written exactly how the pill should look like and how it's dispersed. So there's a lot of UI UX decisions that have gone into that, and that's the good news, is that we have done it in the past, so maybe it's time to do that for the present as well. And I will just leave you on this to say that things like this have been done in the past, and not in the past, but they're in the process of being done. So you have Finland, you have different kind of environments that are working towards this. On that note, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as a fellow Canadian, I totally agree. It's very interesting to see what's happening in Europe and what's happening in North America, and especially in Canada, because we're usually ahead of the game in a lot of things, but so thank you so much for this talk. It's been super interesting. My pleasure. Questions, comments, thoughts? Anyone? All right. Time to choose people. What was the most surprising thing you heard?
Just that we're machines producing data on a continuous basis, and some of it's being used for our benefit, and a lot of it's being used without our knowledge, and maybe not to our benefit.
Exactly.
And people are profiting from it, and some of it they're using to profit from, and some of it they're throwing away.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when a researcher does research in medicine and they don't share their research. The community can benefit from the research being published, even if the researcher is done with it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, great thought. Any response to that?
I mean, it's self-explanatory on that regards. But I think what usually happens, actually, maybe other questions.
Sure.
If there are any.
Other questions? Yeah. Yes, I'm going to give you the mic so that we can pick it up on the recording. Here you go.
Yeah, great talk and very thought-provoking. I suppose, in some ways, what you're looking here is for a people revolution, I suppose, to get this and someone to follow, right? Because if you look at Europe, in Brussels, they're not elected, right? So they're doing the right thing because they're not elected. Unfortunately, we elect bad people. So how do you see this actually playing out, right? It's not an easy objective that you're trying to get to without people actually uprising and demanding this.
Yeah, so listen, there are some regulations in place where we punish, those bad actors, right? Or there are always talks of breaking the big tech, right? And I think these are some good kind of ways of interjecting to that space. But what we really found is that these are almost like patchworks, and it really doesn't get into the essence of it. So, how can we get to that level? I think it starts by recognizing that we have done this in the past. It exists for our judiciary kind of processes. We trust the judge, we trust the jury, there are all of those things. With the healthcare, we have had it. It's just a new thing that, we weren't used to other than the last few decades, I would say a couple of decades. And it's just time enough to get into that. But I will say time is of essence. There's a race towards, the AI, and the longer we wait, the less plausible it becomes for us to really have a say and mitigate and mediate that relationship that we have with the big tech, yeah.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? I think for myself, I have a background in hardware. So I've been working a lot with explaining to people what big data is, right? Because there's all these conferences about Industry 4.0 and big data, and people are like, blah, 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 big data, and they have no idea, like none whatsoever, what that is. And so I think one of the qualities of work like this is just making it accessible for people, just making it something that we understand, right? I mean, we all have sensors on us at all times right now. There's some really nice notices here that everything here is being recorded, and cameras have amazing abilities and everything else. So it's kind of like, how do we make people, first of all, aware of that? And second of all, how do we make it accessible for them so that it's something that's understood in an everyday language, right? So I think the work you're doing is super important from that perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any final comments, questions? No? Okay, well, let's give a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Amir.
Thank you.